Okay, let's be clear about it first. I'm totally fascinated by Lars Spijbroek's works. They're beautiful, fragile, and breathtaking. Take a look, for instance, at his Sonno House or his renderings of Hidden Lives and Whispering Garden. Examples of wonderful design, shaped in an organic and environmental fashion, making you reappreciate your habitat, or better, the ecosystem we are and live in. Yes, this is ecology, permitting me to use notions like awesome in its proper historical context. Once, only revelations of God or nature were allowed to be called awesome. But being a professional art worker, I hardly ever use notions like beautiful or awesome. Art is much more than plain aesthetics, and we have moved far beyond categories like the sublime. However, I would like to make an exception for Lars, since he has put aesthetics back on the ethical map. That is why he was my number one last year when I teamed up in a jury appointed to select a Dutch artist for an important art award. Unfortunately, he didn't even make it to the second round. Sorry, he's not an artist, the posse replied. In this postscript, I would like to elaborate on the notion of empathy within the larger context of the ecology of design. By doing so, I will introduce two controversies, hopefully lighting up the urgency of the topics we're discussing here. We have been ripped off by modernism and postmodernism, Lars Spijbroek remarked in a conversation on the aesthetics of variation. Then he leaps back into the 19th century, calling himself almost a neo-Gothic, since he wants to make clear he's re-evaluating that Gothic tradition, that splendid marriage between architecture and art, between structure and ornament, between geometry and organics, between life and science. Where there's no gap between life and matter, Spijbroek argues, there's no distinction between the natural and the artificial. He talks about an aesthetics of matter. However, I would prefer the notion, an aesthetics of life that matters. After all, his aesthetics relates deeply to all living things and all relations between them. All relations are felt relations. Spijbroek wants to carry John Ruskin's lamp of life. We see, therefore we feel, and because we feel, we act. The Gothic dream of patterns and variation cherished an architecture that was consciously employed for no less an object than the elevation and evolution of man and life. Spijbroek's relational aesthetics also seems perfectly in tune with Spinoza's monism, with his notion of the oneness of natura naturata, or naturing nature, and natura naturans, or natured nature. Life itself is and produces life at the same time. Spijbroek accepts this proposition rightly as a call for empathy, or to stick to the theme of tonight's event, as a plea for an ecology of design. According to Spinoza, empathy is shared love, based on intellectual and felt understanding of the world as an interconnected web of causal relationships. Empathy is the capacity to really enjoy the happiness of the other and to really understand the sorrows of the other. All is affect and feeling. Empathy requires a loving and feeling intellect. In his book, The Architecture of Continuity, Spijbroek criticizes modern architecture for not being capable of empathy, that is, for not being able to understand order and contingency in an ontological relationship, as producing each other. By understanding life and matter strictly as form, and not as interconnected patterns of organization, as rhythms if you like, modern architecture has killed variation and replaced it by repetition. The notion of empathy touches an exciting debate about architecture and modern culture, raised by computer scientist and mathematician Nikos Salingaros. The events of 9/11 have caused a watershed in architectural history, Salingaros argues. The attack on the World Trade Center by terrorist Mohammed Atta, who also happened to be a professional urban planner, learned that, I quote, "The West has come identified with a nihilistic architecture whose hegemony has erased human-built form around the world." End of the quote. And as we have come to learn, Atta's master thesis handled the subject of desecration of traditional variety in Islamic cities by modernist architecture and planning. Indeed, he felt ripped off by modernism and postmodernism. Like Spijbroek, Salingaros favors earlier movements, like the Gothic moment. He begs architects to carry the lamp of life again. He begs for empathy, or in his own words, we have a moral responsibility to practice the humane architecture and urbanism. As an expert on complexity theory, Salingaros accuses architecture since Le Corbusier and the Bauhaus of replacing diversity and variation by geometrical fundamentalism, repetition, and replication. Modern and postmodern architecture should not be seen as a science or an art form, but as a cult and an ideology, as propaganda, lacking feeling, empathy, and consequently any understanding of the world. As a result, Salingaros writes in his essay, A Missed Learning Opportunity, the third world feels a rage towards modernist architecture and urban models have introduced in their countries, which have destroyed their built heritage. His argument is fueled by writer Eric Darton, who wrote a biography of the World Trade Center 10 years ago. In an intriguing postscript written shortly after 9/11 and entitled The Janus Phase of Architectural Terrorism, Darton investigates a number of comparisons between the lives and careers of Mohammed Atta and World Trade Center chief architect Minoru Yamasaki. He reaches the conclusion that both the building and the destruction should be seen as enactments of polarized daydreams of domination. He calls for an architecture that moves forward differently into a world in which abstract thoughts become a function of our integrative capacities and where we plan ourselves and our lives into structures. In other words, empathic architecture. This notion of empathy also responds to another debate, this time within the design community, and is sometimes referred to as designism, named after the annual convention of a New York design community. The word designer has become so debased that many companies and designers have banned the word from their ads and websites. They are motivated by the idea that we are on the verge of a revulsion against manufacturing design, that we live in a world drowning in objects, and that we have come to realize how close our greedy habits of consumption have brought us to the limits of the world's resources. The response has been twofold, Fiona McCarthy writes in her Guardian article, Shallow Objects of Desire. Some designers tear down all distinctions between design and art. They only produce small numbers of precision-made objects. Another, more exciting school of thought questions the need to develop new products. Why not take existing archetypes, oh, they're gone, and just refine them? Again, empathy is a key notion in the controversy. How do we really want to relate to the world? In an enlightening book, The Language of Things, Dejan Sujic describes his addiction to design products and how his feelings of uneasiness and guilt have grown over the years. Sujic is a director of the Design Museum in London, an architecture critic for The Observer. In his book, he asks himself, what do we really value? He finally comes up with an answer. The greatest form of luxury would be the relief of not living with so much stuff. Or in McCarthy's words, we are piling up our houses with ostentatious objects, thinking they will make us better people, more lovable and human. What fools have we become? It is not a coincidence that Fiona McCarthy discerns echoes of the arts and crafts movement in contemporary discussions. 15 years ago, she wrote a wonderful biography of William Morris. Morris believed in the creation of things of lasting beauty, to be passed on to later generations. He believed in ideals of permanent value, in materials and objects that would mature over the years. Yes, he carried Ruskin's lamp of life. Lars Sperbeck also aims at this architecture of delicacy. I totally believe in the digital arts and craft movement, he proudly confesses in The Architecture of Continuity. We have become totally entangled in a semiotic web in which our relationship with the object has been dissolved. In other words, what fools have we become? That's why we need to restore that relationship, Sperbeck says. However, if we take a close look at his quote, he's not aiming at another, updated version of the arts and craft movement. He's digitalizing the version. In music, this process of hyperreflectivity is called dub. In dub, low-frequency modulation, or baselines, create spatial territories. They are the ordinates on a new map. Where the melody pulls you in, the bass pushes you out. Beats in dub are not used for rhythmic support. However, they are supposed to explore that spatial realm. They are the coordinates on the map. By adding echo or delay, it is not the beat that is stressed, but the spatial holes between them. Every new beat produces a desire for the next black hole. The result is an interconnected architecture. Where you expect rhythm, you get space. Where you expect space, you get rhythm. Instead of listening to things in the outside world, you find yourself present within an immanent sonic environment. This is not modernism, this is bass culture. According to writer Kocho Shun, dub is an ecological medium. The creator and the object have become one. Dub is the digital arts and crafts movement par excellence. The fact that Lars frequently works with sound artist Edwin van der Heijden seems to strengthen this notion and practice of interconnectedness. To summarize my postscript, an ecology of design starts with empathy and with a simple confession. What fools have we become? The answer is also stunningly simple. Let's fall in love with the world again. Not the world of the beats, but with the world between the beats. That's it.